One of Notre Dame's top targets on the offensive side of the ball, making his commitment on Sunday, August 8th, and that's four-star wide receiver CJ Williams, a top 30 player out of Southern California, Santa Ana Monterey High School. Notre Dame among the finalists for Williams' commitment. Should he join the Irish's class, he would be its top-ranked player in the 2022 class. But Mike, how did Notre Dame get to this point where it is a finalist and potentially on the cusp of landing CJ Williams?
Yeah, so Notre Dame offered him pretty early in 2020. I want to say it was like a month before COVID shut down, and yeah, I mean, you see it from the outset, and it's like, all right, this kid's already a national prospect. It's going to be a tough recruitment to win. Seems to have already had relationships built stronger with other schools already, but then Notre Dame just continued to stay the course. And he actually set up a visit to see Notre Dame April of 2020. Of course, we all know what happened with the pandemic. He was not able to take that visit out to Notre Dame. He had a bunch of visits he was going to take last spring. None of them were able to happen. But again, Notre Dame just hung around in there. I've said this a bunch of times about CJ Williams, whether it's in podcasts or radio hits on our website, blueandgold.com, Patrick. It's like Notre Dame was running about somewhere in the 4 to 6 range. And I've talked to CJ about this, and he even admitted it. Like most of 2020, Notre Dame was lagging a little bit behind, but then they really picked things up. Not that their efforts were minimal, like it just picking up in terms of their connection with CJ Williams. I think a big turning point was when Brian Kelly really got involved as well. Tommy Rees started pushing for him, as well as, of course, Dell Alexander. So, Notre Dame then hosted him for an official visit. He also checked out Texas, Stanford, and USC in June. I think his official visit to Notre Dame went the best in June, though. Will it be enough to land his commitment, though? We're just going to have to see, Patrick.
So you touched on a few coaches there, but who was really at the forefront of this recruitment on the Notre Dame side, getting to this point with CJ Williams?
Yeah, kind of touched on it there. Kelly, I think, played a huge role for Notre Dame to get to this point. But really, Dell Alexander just gets a ton of credit. And, Patrick, so much of our job is interacting with Notre Dame fans on our blueandgold.com message board. And the biggest coach, or the coach that's been receiving the most criticism, I should say, for his recruiting efforts has been Dell Alexander. And it's largely because of the 2019 and 2020 classes for the Irish. You only have one player left in Xavier Watts from that 2019 class. But you look at, like, if you just kind of push that aside, you look at 2020, signing Lorenzo Styles and Deion Colsey and Jaden Thomas, and then in this class, CJ Williams potentially, Tobias Merriweather committed to Notre Dame on Wednesday, and Amorion Walker. Man, if Notre Dame signs that group of 6 at over a 2-year span, that's darn good recruiting. But then the bigger question comes, what does their Notre Dame career look like? I know I'm kind of getting off topic, but again, Dell Alexander led the charge for Notre Dame to get to this point in the recruitment. I really think he's done a nice job. Again, when you look at Notre Dame running about 4th or 5th for so much of this recruitment and then really surged late, he definitely gets a ton of credit.
We'll run through Williams' top 5 here: Alabama, USC, Notre Dame, Stanford, and Texas. Of course, you've got 2 in-state schools, an SEC school, a soon-to-be SEC school, and then Notre Dame. A lot of options here in terms of geography for CJ Williams. But if you had to pick his final 2 out of that group, who are you going with?
Definitely Notre Dame being one of them. When you look at the other 4, I don't see personally Alabama as a huge factor in this one. I don't believe he took a visit there. That's just one that I don't see personally. USC is always tough to beat for a modern day kid. Texas, a lot of people thought was the school that was leading for him into the spring. And then what's the other school I'm missing here?
Stanford.
Stanford. Yeah, so to me, that's the answer next to Notre Dame is Stanford. Such a high academic kid. Stanford's done a really good job for him. He took a midweek visit there at the end of June. For me again, yeah, Notre Dame or Stanford, tight battle. Patrick, both schools have done a really good job here.
So Notre Dame won a Irish versus Cardinal battle on August 4th in getting another Rivals 250 receiver in Tobias Merriweather. Do you see that same outcome happening for Notre Dame when it comes to CJ Williams? What's your final prediction?
I'm wearing this shirt, which is, I mean, kind of Stanford color, but I will say that it's not indicative of my prediction for the commitment. Yeah, you mentioned Tobias Merriweather. It's flown under the radar because both of these guys aren't, big interview guys. Like CJ and Tobias are fantastic talking to the media, but they aren't big me guys on Twitter and whatnot. So it's kind of flown under the radar a little bit that they're actually really good friends. They played together for the FSP 7-on-7 team in the spring, which is based in the Pacific Northwest. And CJ wanted to play on that team, so we could spend some time with Tobias and get to hang out with him in person. You know, um, be a sting for Stanford if they lose both of these recruiting battles. But, I think it's kind of going under the radar again that, not a package deal necessarily between Merriweather and Williams, but it certainly wouldn't come as a surprise if you hear afterwards that those two guys that talked about, like, let's go to Notre Dame together. We'll see, Patrick. I mean, we've seen kids flip before, like they've announced a commitment. Like everyone's kind of assuming right now that it's Notre Dame. We saw Tyson Ford; he was going to Oklahoma, like that was for sure. And then he ended up at Notre Dame like before he announced his commitment. Like he had set a date. I want to say it was in December of 2020 to announce in January of 2021. And then what did he end up doing? Commit to Notre Dame. We saw it with Benjamin Morrison. He was going to Washington, and then before you know it, he announces a commitment to the Fighting Irish. So I say that to just kind of put out there it's recruiting. So, you just don't want to be surprised by anything because, again, these are kids and their decisions can flip very quickly. But as things stand, as we record this video, I really do like where Notre Dame stands.
We'll find out where he's going on Sunday, August 8th, and we'll see if Notre Dame ends up with its highest ranked player in the 2022 class if it lands CJ Williams.